Do you want to make your own podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. And this is the platform that I use because it makes it so simple to record and distribute your podcast all in one place using your cell phone. What you need to do is download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello, my name is Catherine Moore, social worker, mom, coffee lover, and founder of Socialworkersrise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. I'm so excited you found my podcast. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We will hear the stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Before we hop into this amazing episode, I wanted to take a moment to be transparent with you and explain what Social Workers Rise is and where we're going. So, Social Workers Rise is more than a podcast. My vision is to create a social worker family, a place and a community where we as social workers can feel supported, empowered, and equipped to do all of the jobs that we need to do. And it's going to be continually evolving as times evolve. So, this was born out of an emotion that I had. I felt lonely in the field, that I didn't really have very many places to go. I didn't really have too many people to look up to as mentors and to be able to ask questions. And I didn't know where to go to find that one-on-one connection with people that I really, really needed to ask questions, to express how I felt, to voice my frustrations, and to even have that feedback like, hey, Catherine, I think you need to take a break. You really seem kind of burnt out right now. Like maybe you should just, reevaluate, is this job worth it? So just to have that sounding board and that really strong community of support. So that is what I envision for Social Workers Rise. And the way that we're doing that is one, through this podcast, and two, we're going to be offering ongoing learning and virtual training opportunities and a way to create a community. So with that, we're having our really first big course series coming up for you if you are a person who is striving to be a therapist. You are likely thinking about getting your license to provide clinical therapy. You may be already doing one-on-one clinical therapy, but don't really feel very confident in your skills and really want a stronger skill set. And also for new roles, new graduates who are entering these roles who you have the basics, but you really just need to tie it in all together and essentially learn how to take the client through the therapeutic process. So this 5-course series is actually called Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist. And this is going to be launching this summer. I'm very excited, and I hope that you are too if you are considering just getting stronger in your clinical skills. This was made for you. And we are still developing it right now. So please feel free to reach out for me. I have a VIP list, a list for very interested professionals. And if you would like to get on that VIP list to be the first to know when registration opens for this event, then shoot me an email, slide up in my DMs at Social Workers Rise on Instagram. Let me know that you're interested, and I would be happy to add you to that VIP list. So for now, let's hop into this episode and get started. Hello, Dr. Henderson. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Should I call you Angela, Dr. Henderson? What should I call you?
All would be perfect. Everything would be fine. Dr. Henderson or Angela is perfectly fine.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to talk with you and to kind of dive into this difficult conversation. And I know it's been ongoing in the Black community and kind of newer in the non-Black community, which I'm grateful that we are able to have these conversations now, and it is being talked about, and people are beginning to do the work. So I'm very excited.
I'm definitely excited too that we can, have this conversation and be able to talk about not only how this affects our profession, but the clients we serve and, our loved ones and the people that we speak with every day.
Definitely. So I was looking at your website and I was just reading a little bit more about you, and your history is really fascinating as far as what you've done in the social work world and for social justice and environmental justice. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience and what you've done?
Yes. So my experience, I am into social welfare policy and social justice and research. I really like to change systems, and I'm really into systems changes. So I look at how I can work on whether it's crafting or editing different policies that affect us with regards to the social welfare system and social justice. One of the pieces of legislation that just passed in Virginia that I spearheaded and led with Delegate Guzman and State Senator Jennifer McClellan is the Virginia version of the Social Work Reinvestment Act, the Dorothy I. Height and Whitney M. Young Jr. Social Work Reinvestment Act, which deals a lot with salary, research, compensation, recruitment, job satisfaction, and funding, but also student debt, which is a big issue affecting social workers. And I also love to look at how physical environments, so features of the physical environments, whether it's vegetation, waterways, sceneries, colors, how all these different factors in our neighborhoods and communities, cities, and states can affect, depending on the zip code someone lives in, the presence of mental health conditions in people. And some of the other interesting things that I've looked at in the past with other colleagues is I was a part of the Police Minority Recruitment Project with the Virginia Office of the Attorney General. And I was the principal investigator of that project, where we looked at how to strengthen relationships between the community and police officers. So I'm really into the macro side of social work, but I did in the past have some experience with micro. I feel like it's critically important for macro social workers to have some experience in the micro realm, because the worst thing to do is to kind of think you know how to solve the problems of the community and not get that one-on-one and group interaction before you go into that policy and research arena.
Yeah, I can totally see how that makes sense, because I originally wanted to go into macro, but just the way things turned out, I turned out to be micro and got my clinical license. But it's really opened my eyes to the needs of people who I'm trying to serve and who I'm trying to help. And what I think is their main problem, it is not necessarily what is really their main problem or what they see as the problem. So it's really just, learning how to start where the client is and how to help them and understand them, which is so, so powerful for macro work.
Yes, indeed.
That's amazing. So how did you get into all of this? Like, how did you know you even wanted to be a social worker to begin with?
Well, thank you, Catherine. And before we keep going, I just wanted to say, and I know that you're thinking the same thing, that, I'd like to just extend my thoughts and prayers to George Floyd's family and his loved ones. There was a beautiful funeral service today and memorial services today, and I just wanted to extend that from me and you to their family.
Yes, thank you so much for that. That is, yes, thank you so much. And today we're recording this on June 4, so I'm really glad that there's some memorials going on, and my heart goes out to the family of George Floyd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I reflected on that because of, I just thought about with, how did I get into social work, and understanding that it was in high school that I started to make connections with seeing that I had a high empathetic side to how other people felt. And so one of my loves is art. And all the way up until like 10th grade, I thought I was going to go to art school and become a artist. And next thing I know, I took a peer helping course. And the peer helping course changed my life. We were able to go to schools and help kids with tutoring and mentored youth. And we also worked with families that were affected by fires or families that were affected by violence, just different social activities for different families and communities in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And so my teacher, Miss Gail, we love Miss Gail. She, talked to a lot of us about that, there's a career as far as community service. There's different types of service, but there's also social work. And so I was able to read up on it and see that all the different things from the values connected right to me. And it was organic. It was like wanting to become a social worker and working to become a social worker really inspired me, mind, body, and soul. And so I was able to go to North Carolina A&T State University to get my bachelor's degree and receive my master's degree from Howard University and my PhD in social work from Howard.
Wow. So from like you were in high school and you knew, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I always, at that point in time in high school, saw that I had a knack for helping people find certain resources, helping people to think about a different or a path of solving different solutions if they were dealing with different social problems. And so, yeah, I made that connection a little early on.
That's fabulous. I really love that. Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that. I kind of want to dive into like the meat of our conversation today. So there's a lot going on, and there's just, I don't even know where to start, Angela.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot. And I definitely understand that. And, because like you were saying, not only are our thoughts and prayers with the George Floyd family, but also with Minneapolis, Minnesota, and just all families that have dealt with a loved one killed and murdered by police officers. And we all know that, not all police officers. We have some wonderful community policing police officers that walk the neighborhoods side by side with community members. But there are police officers that need to be held accountable that commit inhumane acts against human beings. And Some of the things I thought about is, for instance, my family was directly affected by police brutality. My uncle, Jeffrey Samuel Judd, was killed by two police officers in 1996.
Mm.
And yes, and I also think about, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. How this trauma can not only affect us as social workers, but affect our clients. There's so many people, not only Black, but Latino and white, that have been affected by inhumane and unethical police brutality as a result of police officers.
Mm-hmm. Which I feel like is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the police brutality part is really the main focus or the goal. I know that it is also, intertwined with racism in America, but is the Black Lives Matter movement is about police brutality and holding them accountable. Is that right?
Right, but one of the biggest things that we want to do from everything that's happening is come to terms with institutional racism and discrimination in our country. And we have to hold people accountable, Black people and brown people, but all people, but Black people in particular. There's been centuries and decades of racism and discrimination, from slavery to the Jim Crow laws. And they're not just words. Sometimes if we're not living in that person's lifestyle or their life, and we don't walk a day in the life of how they're feeling, they're not understanding, what does racism mean? What does it feel like? Just understanding how our ancestors were beaten, some were raped, some were killed and lynched, like Emmett Till. And that has a reverberating effect, not only for the Black community, but Latinos and American Indians. So we're talking about, like you're saying, Catherine, a systemic issue in throughout our ecological system, from the laws, the legislation, but all the stereotypes and bias that come in when we have people that may not be aware of, or are aware that they are racist, or that they have discriminatory views towards people.
Mm-hmm. And I always, try to point out that we all have a certain level of prejudice. Like, even if you don't want to say racism, we all have our certain level of prejudice where we see somebody and we are making judgment about them in our head, whether they are positive or negative. And it's just the first step to be aware that we're even doing that. Some people just want to say, like, oh, no, I don't do that at all. I don't see color, which is a lie.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. When you look at the criminal justice system and the education system, the employment, health, and mental health systems, so we can look at how Blacks and brown people, or people of color, sentencing disparities. So African Americans and Latinos receive higher sentencing on some of the same charges as their white counterparts. And also, if we're looking at it from an educational standpoint, we can look to see how our Black and Latino youth are being suspended at a higher rate for some of the same acts that a white youth might commit. When we're looking at health and mental health, we can look at some of the childbirth mortality that Black women are dealing with in our country, dying in childbirth, or during childbirth, or after childbirth. And what it feels like for a Black woman to say that they're in pain, but the pain of a Black woman or the pain of a Black male is perceived differently than the pain of a white male or a white female.
What do you mean by that?
So there's instances where Black women may have said that there was a health issue or concern that they had, but it may not have been taken seriously. And that is because of certain perceptions or thought processes that may go along with what is perceived pain. We kind of talked about a week ago, me and some of my colleagues, how sometimes it's perceived that our pain might not be as valid as somebody else's pain because of how we look or perception of who we are.
Wow, that's powerful. Man, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I mean, and also just being able to look at each other's lenses. So, for instance, one of the things I love is, and you understand too, through all of this, we know that every police officer and every police department, there are some model departments out here. We need to take a look at them. But, Police Chief Arredondo, Police Chief Gina Hawkins, Police Chief Sherilyn Davis, and Police Chief Art Acevedo, they're doing, they're trying their best to demonstrate that understanding of being empathetic and humane, and trying to figure out how to address racism and institutional discrimination. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, being able to understand the trauma and pain that Black people are having to deal with. That trauma and pain doesn't go anywhere, and it can pass on through generations and through a lifetime, and how a day-to-day encounter. So when I talk about walking in the life in the shoes of another person, somebody could say, well, I don't see racism. Racism isn't a problem to me. The biggest part about that statement is I and me. This is the lens that you are living in. But if you go and you sit down and you talk to another family that's living in a different zip code, or if you've never interacted with someone who's Black before or Latino before, how does it feel to be pulled over by a police officer? What kind of fear do you have? What is the perception of a group of Black males that are standing on the corner together, huddled together, just talking about sports, versus white boys that are doing the same thing and that are just living their life and trying to grow up and be successful, talking about sports the same? But why is it that, one group of boys, young boys that have not grown up to even see adulthood yet, are perceived as a threat differently than boys who are white that are trying to do some of the same things when it comes to accomplish goals?
Right. Yeah, I know. I have this conversation a lot because we each have our own experiences based on how we look and how people perceive us. It's impossible to really truly understand everybody's experience. And it's very ignorant of someone to say, well, it's not a problem for me, so it's not a problem for anyone else in America. Like, that doesn't make any logical sense at all. And I just that people would just, be more like, just think about it for a second, because you're in your little neighborhood, your tiny little corner of America. There is a gigantic country out there with millions of people who have their own experiences.
Well, and that brings us to a great point, because I thought about it sometimes from my mentors, but also the discussions that are taking place. There are some people at the far extreme of not understanding race relations, empathy, cultural competency, and are so set in their ways, it'll take them to see that there's a problem. And that's with any problem. The first step is to see and identify that it's a problem, and it's not something that is okay to think, and believe. But some of the things I was thinking about is, because that's one of the beautiful things, and I'm sure you saw that, Catherine, from the protests that we've seen. There is every racial group that you could think of out protesting for George Floyd and his family, but also the countless others, Breonna, just trying to display that compassion and humanity. So I think that's a beautiful thing, because that brings us to the point of something that I thought about: cultural humility. Social work talks about 3 factors of cultural humility. And one of the things that I know you do, and I pride myself on, is I always give myself a self-examination or a tune-up each month. Because as you know, as social workers, it is hypocritical to ask other people to make changes, like to ask our clients to make changes in their lives, and we can't take a look at ourselves and make those changes to our lives. And that's not to say that people aren't going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And I think that's the beautiful part of being a human being, is that you're going to make mistakes, but it's the part of showing and putting forth actions to display that you're willing to learn from your mistakes and commit to action. And so with cultural humility, the first part is to look at a long self-evaluation and constructive self-critique. Second is commitment to fixing power imbalances and commitment to developing partnerships with people and groups. So if somebody's trying to figure out what's next, where do I go from here? Or if they're feeling like, well, I could do better when it comes to race relations, or understanding a different view and lens from mine, whether it's somebody Black, Latino, it could be somebody that is Indian. It's all about what someone wants to be able to hold themselves accountable and do that exploration to help them not only grow, but to do the advocacy work that they know that they're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious, what does your monthly tune-up look like? What exactly do you do?
Thank you for asking. I actually have like a dry erase board, and I put up challenges and also strengths that I know that, I've dealt with or deal with. Some of the challenges that I've had are now, in the strengths section. But each month I look at what are some things that I know I can do better? What are some things I know I can work on? Did I catch myself doing something that I know did not align how I wanted it to align with the social work values and ethics? Or are there things that I know that I'm capable of doing? Or do you have some type of fear or reservation about something when it's really an area of growth and opportunity, if that makes sense? So I try to just make sure I hold myself accountable to make sure that, because when I first saw those social work values and competencies and values when I was in college, I actually printed them out in the computer lab and posted them up on my wall in my dorm room, because I wanted to make sure that I started to remember every day what I was signing up for in the service profession of being a social worker.
Definitely. I also have those posted up where I see them on a regular basis. They're just so powerful and empowering. And during times of like questioning, like, okay, what do I do now? What's going to be the best route or the best way to handle this? We go back to the foundation, to the basics, like, okay, well, given this list of attributes, like what is going to be most fitting for my core values?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because sometimes I watch First Take, and I was watching a conversation about Drew Brees. And Drew Brees had made a statement about kneeling, but he did not address that George Floyd was murdered and how that reverberated and impacted the United States and just people throughout the world. And so one of his teammates, Malcolm Jenkins, was distraught and very upset at Drew Brees. But Stephen A. Smith made a great point because Drew Brees apologized today. And that brought us to the part about the cultural humility. But Stephen Smith said that it was a victory for communication, because you have some people that'll never apologize for anything. What he said was wrong. It lacked empathy, and he needs to make sure that he works on that. And the critical aspect of all of that is, though, that he acknowledged that he made a mistake, but in that, he is willing to learn and grow from his mistake. And that is kind of an example of that commitment to self-evaluation and constructive self-critique. And so he'll be able to work with Malcolm Jenkins and his other teammates to be on that road of understanding cultural humility even more and growing from that situation. So these situations are not pretty. They're tense. They can be emotional at times, but being able to grow from them and be a better person is really what's important and what counts.
Which is definitely where we need to be going, and I think really the next steps. So I really want to just make sure I understand, where do we go from here? So like the first step is really our self-evaluation, having cultural humility, excuse me, being able to just critique ourselves in a way, not even critique, but maybe like areas for improvement, right? And I like the way that you provide a visual for yourself on your whiteboard, and you really discuss, what are my challenges and strengths. And I think it's amazing that you have turned your challenges into strengths over time by just being able to work on them and really focusing time on areas that you identify that need to be improved. I think that's really amazing.
Thank you. And another area, Catherine, is self-care. So diving into so people are already having to deal with COVID, but racism or sexism and all the different issues that we've had to deal with are in these various ecological systems and cause compounded stress for people. Catherine, you have your stress. I have my stress. Our families have our stress. As we say in social work, we can't take care of other people if we don't take care of ourselves. So whether it's that a person needs counseling or therapy, or wants to join a support group, or they need to draw, ride a bike. So because I'm in psychological restoration and how the physical environment helps to improve mood and mental health, for me, going to the park restores me. Going outside for a walk is beautiful. Looking at different beautiful waterways. Some people like meditation. I love meditation too, yoga. It might be that some people going into the pool and exercising, or, treating themselves to a me time day, a self-care day, or having a staycation. It's critically important to be able to not only process how we're feeling as social workers with the police brutality, the racism, institutional racism, and discrimination, but also, in addition to that, the COVID and other situations that are going on where it might be even childcare, employment. We have a lot of people unemployed. African Americans are deeply affected by that. So when you're dealing with that much compounded stress, especially our service workers, because we want to give our 100% and more to the people of our communities, we just have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and loving ourselves through this time.
Yes, definitely. That is so important. And I definitely resonated when you said the compounding stress, because I was already feeling stressed from COVID and all the changes. And I was like, okay, I'm getting in the flow. Like, this still sucks, but I'm getting in the flow. And then this all happened. And it was I was already on shaky ground, as I'm sure a lot of people were, and I still have my job, thank God. But a lot of times people
Yes.
don't, and so that's another gigantic stress. And then it kind of like the third, it was just too much. It's just too much. We were already on
Yes.
a foundation.
It's
It was
too
too
much.
much.
And then, as we know, as social workers, this stress for others with, them wanting, our people are going to need services and resources, and we're going to be on the front line of that. So it's imperative. And I'm not perfect, like I said, but it's imperative that we're taking care of ourselves and loving on ourselves, because as the rates of need go up due to COVID, due to the different challenges that we're facing in our country, due to the racism, or even just the ecological systems that may cause stress on people for different reasons, whether it's being able to afford the health care bills or being able to put food on the table, having to make that choice. It's just a lot. So we want to be able to love on ourselves, give ourselves stress relief, so we can be able to be on the front line and not be perfect, but be able to have ways to boost ourselves and keep ourselves
Definitely.
healthy.
I think the thing that helped me most was identifying the the feelings that lead up to burnout. So when you're thinking, like, when you wake up and you're just like, "Ugh, I just can't today," or you start to feel stressed out and overwhelmed every single day, you're physically tired, you become apathetic, like, "Oh, just whatever, let me just do this so I can get it over with," and you're not really caring and trying, you're
Right.
not passionate or enjoying it. Those are all like my little red flags for me to know, like, okay, I need to take a step back and just practice my self-care and get myself back to the best Catherine and the best social worker that I know I can be.
Yeah, you're right, Catherine, because, one of the things, because I got my PhD, my mind works like 200 miles an hour. And my body, at times, I used to drag my body along, and my body would be trying to tell me, look, I need a break, or look, I need you to slow down. And, so it's those little cues, those gut feelings, or those things that we know might be off, that we need to make sure that we, like you said, that we tackle, and
For
we
sure.
don't get burnt
You
out.
also mentioned, as far as the things that we can do, like going forward, where do we go from here? You mentioned about power imbalances. Can you talk? What do you mean about that? Can you talk about
Yes.
that?
Yes. Well, within the different systems that we have, the different ecological systems, so we have the school systems, but the main system that is out and in front right now is the criminal justice system. So when we talk about power imbalances, it cannot be that four police officers, or police officers in any position, or even social workers, because we'll put ourselves in that same situation. We're service members as well, can kill someone, and someone else that is not in a service situation can kill someone, or hurt someone, or murder someone, and not be held accountable. We have to make sure that we make structural and system changes, not only at the policy level, but also hold people accountable. So we know that in every service arena, we have the people who are ethical, who work very hard every day, who love the people and are by the people. And then we have people who are serving our communities. Someone said it so passionately the other day: protect and serve. And when we talk about the power imbalances, we have to address people who are being unethical, who have a long history of violating human rights, a long history of practicing unethical behavior, and hold them accountable. It cannot be that people are settled, have settlements outside of court or within court, or that a person's unethical practices or behavior is not addressed. So when we talk about the imbalance of power, if we know that we have certain people in certain positions that are not ethical and are behaving in an inhumane manner, that reverberates into the policies. That also can reverberate into the different political officials that we have, that we vote for. If they are carrying those practices with them one place, they'll carry them with themselves in the criminal justice system, within the employment system, within the medical system. So when we talk about imbalance of power, also, if we're talking about cultural humility, how are our laws affecting one group of people or various groups of people differently than others? If we've looked at not only from the crack and the cocaine differences in prison sentencing, but also it can't be that because someone has a certain type of income or that they live in a certain area code or zip code, that they're treated differently than others. Or because someone can afford an attorney and the other one cannot, you have two kids, two boys or two girls with marijuana charges, use of marijuana. But because they come from different sides of the track, or because they may not have certain type of representation, so we have to look at, are there certain people that hold positions in our systems that are, when we look through the data, you can see a striking balance between sentencing and sentencing based on racial groups. Are there different systems that are set up and legislation and policies that we need to address that can be either dismantled or adjusted to make sure that they are not discriminatory and provide heartache for one racial group over the other.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, that completely makes sense. And then the third area that you mentioned was create an alliance with groups. Where do we even start with that? Like, what kind of groups should we be looking at? Like, where should we even start with that? And then, how is that going to help us?
I feel like one of the things I also saw that was coming up is that, some people were weighing out, is protesting just as effective as policy, or, is there different things that people can do? And my response to that is everybody has a role to play. From the passion, the love, and the energy at that micro level of meeting new people, seeing that people have some of the same interests of you. What differences do we have? What similarities do we share? All of those things help us build bridges. Also donating, it could be that someone feels like their best way of supporting this cause is through donations. Some of the other things that we can do is voting. So voting is critical, and not only, I know some people may have, already heard it, but it is critical not only at the local and state level, but the federal level, but especially at the local and state level, because that can affect the policies that are directly affecting you. And so also, I look at it as social workers, as far as us being involved also in strategic planning. Some of the things I look at is that we do a great job of being enablers and also brokers when it comes to talking to our clients who are affected by police brutality, but also talking to the police officers that really are trying to form relationships. So just putting it plain, we have some people that are scared to even interact or walk by a police officer. We have some police officers that may be uncomfortable because they don't want to make that person feel scared. So how do we as social workers, and social workers are really good at listening, but also building bridges, helping people build bridges. So I feel that that'll be very helpful. We can also look at working with elected officials, also working with the different social work organizations. So um, Angelo McLean and Mitt Joyner are doing a fabulous job with NASW. Also working with the National Association of Black Social Workers, Dr. Renata Hedrington Jones is doing a fabulous job. CSWE, Chris. Um, and just different service projects that people are interested in. So for instance, I work on service projects with my mentor, who is Ivy McGregor. She's a global philanthropist and director of social responsibility for BeyGOOD. And I work with her team, and I'm a part of Ivy Inc. Soars, but we do a different service activities. And so I think that that's important too. Everybody has different things and various talents that bring out their gifts. So what service activities, whether I'm a micro social worker, it might be that I start having support groups for the families that may have lost a loved one, or work with people in our communities to be able to have the different support groups. And also educating our clients on their rights. What rights do I have? Also working with the police officers and the police departments on the hiring and screening processes, because that's going to be important when we talk about policies and laws. I'd also say that Emerald Garner, who is Eric Garner's daughter, worked with Representative Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand to get the Eric Garner Excessive Use of Force Prevention Act passed in Congress. So it's been introduced in the House. Senator Gillibrand is working to introduce it in the Senate. So it'll be critically important for not only all the social work organizations, but social workers to come together and to figure out how we can support pieces of legislation like that.
I love it. I love it. That's so many ways that we can, as individuals, just create alliances with different groups who are similar than us, and also have some differences too that we can learn from. I know another way that I've seen is the company I work for, they have started ongoing discussions about race relations and their experiences, and it's a voluntary virtual group that they're going to be holding every month, and it's just a safe space for people to come together to have these difficult conversations, to show grace, and also to learn from one another. So all of those ways are very, very powerful. And I kind of just thought,
yeah, and
I was just thinking, there's I hear so much like what is going on with social work? What are we doing? What are we doing to help? You just have to look for it. So there's so much going on, but you're not going to see it on TV or on the radio. Like, you have to really go look for it. Look at these groups, look what's going on. Just Google any kind of area that you're passionate about, that you want to get more information on, and I guarantee there's people doing the work, and there is a place for you.
Yeah, and there's also police social workers. So that's an area of social work that's growing. Different law firms to team up with, and even being a professor, working with our students, working with the universities on different research plans, or connecting that research at the state level, and also working with the churches. So like you said, with everybody having so many different talents as social workers and non-social workers, there's so many ways to work not only on the micro but the macro level, but to find how you feel like, how each person feels like they can best fit in to that team, or fit in and help the people in the community. Also, students, empowering the students it's so beautiful to see them out protesting, taking on the leadership roles. So how can we empower our students and the youth to dream big and to also have a seat at the table when we talk about these different policies and research?
Yes, definitely. So powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Henderson. Where can people find you and find more information about the work that you're doing and get in contact with you?
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. It's an honor. And thank you also to Social Justice Solutions, Courtney and Matthew. Thank you for everything. They're doing a wonderful job. So that's another social service oriented organization. People can find me at Dr. Angela Chanel. That's Dr. Angela, SHENELL, on Instagram and Twitter. And also my website is drangelaShenderson.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Henderson. It was a complete pleasure. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. And thank you so, so much.
Thank you. It's truly an honor. Have a wonderful day,
too.
Catherine.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you loved it, write a review and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. This just helps other people just like you find us and join our community. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram. You can find me at Socialworkersrise. I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.